Hey there, everyone, and welcome. I am Liz, and I would like to say thank you to everyone who's here. I see Nora is here, Jasmine, Susan, and Paula. Thank you guys for joining me today on this Saturday afternoon. So today is the second part of a two-part class that I did. If you were here last time, it was 2 weeks ago. We did the hexagons. So the pattern is the crochet striped hexagon, and that should be in your class materials. We're gonna work through, hi Lindsay, through the written pattern. So if you have that printed out, of course, that's going to be helpful. And hopefully, if you want to work along with me today, hopefully you were able to complete the 2 hexagons that we went over last time. That was kind of basic. This time it's going to be a few different things, so we have a lot to go over. But we're going to add like a border, we're going to add some width, we're going to add some length, and we're going to sew the 2 sides together. So just before we switch over to my hands, this is the finished cardigan, if you guys can see it. So this part is the hexagon. And as you can see, there's 2 hexagons. We did lots of fun striping. We folded the 2 hexagons and put it all together to make a really cool sort of fall vibe cardigan. So let's switch over to my hands view. So that way we can quickly go over our materials. We have our later. Yeah, and if anyone has a question, throw it in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat as much as I can. So I'll answer any questions you guys have as we move along. Oh, Paula says her hexagons are done. Nice. Okay, so we're using, this is our Luxe Merino. This is one of my all-time faves from Loops and Threads because it has like a nice touch of this really soft, luxurious merino in here, and it also has a blend of acrylic too. So it's going to be nice and sturdy, really, really good for garments, and it's like a nice lightweight number 3. So we're using the 4 colors. You can do stripes if you want. You could do solid if you want, but these are the 4 colors we're using, and all this is in the pattern. So for me showing you how to put stuff together, I'm probably going to not do the striping anymore because we did this. We went over the striping last time. So we're just going to work in solid, just kind of in the interest of time. Okay. So what I did, I made 2 hexagons. Solid, so just so I can make them quick. And this is what they look like. We talked about this last time. They're not going to lay flat. They're going to be like this. So that's perfectly fine. That's how it's supposed to be. So we made 2, a right side and a left side. And then we just take those 2, and this is the same for all hexagon sort of patterns, like cardigan patterns, is you make the 2 sides, you make the hexagon and you fold it to like an L shape. So you just fold it like that. Takes a couple. Just fold it so it looks like that. You might fold it the first time and it might look like this. Right? It's not supposed to be like that. So fold it, just keep kind of folding. You'll get it till it looks like an L. So you've got like an upside down L. So this is the sleeve, and this is the body width, half the body width. So the back of the body width and the front of the body width of the cardigan. And this is like the front of the sleeve around to the back of the sleeve, right? Same on the other side, but it's going to be mirrored. So we have the right side and the left side, okay? But that's how it goes together. Obviously, this is a tiny version, but yours is going to be much bigger, so it's in your size, right? You guys with me? Okay, so if we refer back to our pattern, oh, and the other thing, sorry, I forgot to mention our hooks. We were using 4.5 millimeter last time, but of course, use whatever you need to get the correct gauge. And then we're going to use a smaller one to add the border because we want that to be kind of cinched in a bit, right? The ribbing. And I think I'm going to use this cream colored one to kind of add to show you white. This one's white. So last time we did the 2 hexagons, and then we're going to move over to the back. And then there's a little note here. It says the sleeve width is now established. So what I mean by that is this width of the sleeve. So this from here to here. So you can measure it, and if you like the sleeve width, then that's where you're going to stop. But just keep in mind, it's going to be exactly the same as half the body width. So if you need more body width, what you can do, if you don't want to have a big, you can keep going in the hexagon, and then that will create bigger circumference in your sleeve. But if you don't, if you want to keep your circumference in the sleeve where it's at, but you need to add more width to the body, you can just add more rows like we're going to do now. So what we're going to do is add some rows to only the back portion, because the front is going to have a ribbing on it to add some width. So we don't need to add it to the front. We only need to add some rows to the back. And we're going to add them similarly on each side. So add rows on this side of the back and rows on this side of the back. So as you can see how I folded them, this is the right side. You can see all my double crochets are worked on the right side. And if you fold it inside, this is the inside or the wrong side. So make sure it's always facing the right way, so it just looks nice and uniform as you're working all these kind of extra width and length around it. You have to make sure it's facing, both pieces are facing the right way. So before we seam these two together, we're going to add some width to both of the back parts or panels. Okay, so it says, with the next color in the striping sequence, join with a standing double crochet in the chain 2 space at the bottom edge of the right back. So this might be a little confusing, and it might be even more confusing on camera, but this is the right side, because if I pick this up and put it on my body, that's the right side of my body. So this is our right side, and you're going to go by what it is when you wear it, right? So this is the right side when it's worn, and this is the left side when it's worn, right? This is the right front. This is the right back. Okay. So we're going to just move this one out of my way for now. I'm still working with my larger hook until I get to the ribbing. Then I'm going to switch to the smaller hook. And I'm just going to add a standing double crochet in the chain 2 space at the bottom edge of the right back. So this is the back, this is this chain 2 space here, okay? And I'm gonna double crochet. And then double crochet. Now this one really should be, I made an error on the pattern, but maybe I was thinking if I add it this way. Okay, so I want this way facing me. So I'm going to add a double crochet here. And then I'm going to work my way up towards the top, right? So this is the bottom, and then I'm going to work up towards the top so I don't have to turn. And then I'm just going to put a double crochet into each double crochet along the back edge. And all we're doing here really is adding some width. If you only need 1 row of width, you can just add 1 row. If you feel like you need 2 or 3 or more, I think for all the sizes I had to add 3 rows of width. But you can make modifications, you know, as you want for your fit. And just kind of measure as you go. So you would measure the whole back and say, okay, well, I think I need just like maybe 1 more inch or 1/2 an inch or whatever to my back width. And then you can add another row. But right now I'm just adding a row, and this would be whatever color you are working on in your striping sequence. Up to the, and I'm only working up to the top corner. chain two space. And then once I get there, I'm going to turn and make another row. And then once I get to that top corner space, I'm just going to do a double crochet in the top corner space. So now I have a little bit of width worked along the back. Okay, so, and then I have 2 more rows. So we're just going to chain 3 and go back down to here, chain 3, turn and go back down to here. So let's do one more row just for the sake of showing you. Okay, so chain 3, turn, and now one more row along the back. And once you're working like these, so we're no longer working in rounds like we were with the hexagon. So when we were working those rounds, our right side was facing the whole time because we didn't have to turn. We were just going around and around. But at this point, when we're just adding like some rows to make modifications to the width and the length and stuff, we are going to have some, of course, wrong side rows facing because we have to turn and work on the wrong side. So, I mean, that's not really going to be noticeable in any way. I would say the only thing that would be really noticeable is if you had like one full hexagon with all of the right side rows facing, and then you accidentally folded the other one the wrong way. And then you had the other side of the hexagon with all like the wrong side rows rounds facing. You know what I mean? I think that's the only way it would be kind of like unappealing to the eye, or at least I would notice it. I would notice that as like an imperfection. But here we're just doing, you know, back and forth rows. So you're going to have a couple, you know, just like regular double crochet, which still looks good on both sides. So then I'm going to go back down to the bottom, and then I'm going to add one more row of double crochets on this side according to the pattern. But like I said, if you want to make modifications, you can add fewer or more rows. And I'm just going to stop there just for the sake of time. So pretend we did 3. So now I have a little bit, you can see I've got a little bit extra width on the back, right? On my right side. This is what I was talking about. Like, let's say you folded your hexagon this way instead. Then you can see this is the wrong, you know, it kind of doesn't really look like this side. So you want both of your sides to be the same with the right sides facing out. So the right side's facing is going to be facing out in the front, and then the right side is going to be facing out on the back side too. And then as you add these kind of like modifying rows, you'll see some wrong sides, which is totally fine. You're not going to notice that. So then we're going to do the same thing on this side. And I'm going to start at the top here. Remember, I'm only working this along the back edge. You're not doing anything along the front edge because we're going to add the border or the ribbing for that. So we're just going to start at the top now and go down. So standing double crochet. I think I showed you guys how to do that last time. So slip knot on the hook, yarn over, and I just hold on to that so it doesn't go anywhere. Insert into the chain 2 space, pull up a loop, and then once you have, then you have your setup with your 3 loops on your hook, you can just make a double crochet. And if you don't like that, you can just do slip stitch, chain up 3. You don't have to use a standing double crochet.
Liz, we have a question.
Yeah, Kathy says, I don't remember if you said what size the unadjusted pattern would fit. What you should do is, because it would be hard for me to tell kind of what, you know, specific size and stuff like that, is if you just have your 2 hexagons, and what you would do is take your 2 hexagons and then put them together like this, and then measure from here to here. And right, so from here to here would be the width, and then if you would double that, that would be the like the bust circumference. So whatever size that is, if that fits around your bust, like let's say you have a 42-inch bust, if this was you know, you'd want a little ease, a few inches of ease. So if this was only 20 across and 20 across the back, then that would only be 40 inches in circumference. So you'd want to add a little bit more. And for this specific pattern, if you're going to add, if you want to stop, I would at least add a couple rows for the back, so that way you have a little bit of kind of a back neck shaping, and also that way you have some room to add the ribbing in the front and it doesn't like overlap too much, right? So you can stop if you just want to, like I've seen a lot of real simplified hexagon cardis where they just make the 2 hexagons, seam it up in the back, seam it up at the top, boom, it's done. So it's got short sleeves, it's kind of cropped, it doesn't have anything going on as far as like neck shaping and or back neck shaping or anything. But you know, that's kind of a preference thing. For this one, I added a lot of modifications to just kind of make the width and the length a little bit more, that it can go through all sizes, you know, that it can be appropriate for all sizes. Because once you get to the larger sizes, if you keep going in that hexagon, what ends up happening is the length gets really long and the sleeve width gets really, really wide, because all of these parts are equal. So this part is equal to this part. So if you need a pretty, like a good circumference, you're going to end up with a really, also a large sleeve circumference. And that's not really how like the human body is, right? It's not like our arms aren't the same as half of our bust. So that's why it's usually necessary to do modifications with this, unless you want just kind of like the really simple oversized look. So I can't say exactly what size the unadjusted pattern, but we're not really even making too many adjustments in right now. I'm just showing you that we added the rows to the back, and that is really just going to give it some neck shaping too, and also adding a little bit of width. Okay, so you don't have to make any really adjustments if you don't want to. You can just follow the pattern exactly as it is. Okay, so I'm just going to do one, hopefully that answers your question. One quick row, and then I'm going to seam these up. Okay, or I'll do 2 quick rows so it matches. So the other advantage to adding some width in the back like this is it does add a little bit of back neck shaping. So when you seam up the arms and the shoulders, you have a nice like sort of opening for the back neck. So I'm just double crocheting in each double crochet. And since this is all double crochets, it is really easy to make your modifications just kind of, you know, fit to size and not really have to worry specifically about the pattern. Like, so for example, when we start adding length, if yours is long enough as it is, you don't have to add any length rows, or if you want it longer, you can totally add more length rows. Just of course, whenever you do, as usual, you know, whenever you do any modifications to patterns, you have to kind of just take into account the fact that you may not have enough yarn, or you may need some more yarn if you're doing like, you know, a serious modification. In this pattern, this yarn, there's so much in this ball, which is really cool. So you don't even need that much. 410 yards per skein. So you're getting a lot out of this one. And then I'm going to chain 3 and then just work in each one of these double crochets across. So that will give me 2 rows on this side. And whenever I'm making these, it is really helpful to kind of just fold the hexagon back up properly, because sometimes I have definitely started crocheting along the wrong edge and added with where it wasn't supposed to be. So it's helpful to just kind of put it back in place, fold it back in place so you have both pieces where they should be, to make sure you did all of your adding rows in the right spot. And then when I get to the end of this row, I'm just going to put a double crochet in the top of that standing double crochet that I did. So of course I should have the same number of double crochets in both rows as always. I'm just going to put that. Okay, so now let's set this back up, make sure I did this right, and that I have my width where it should be, because I kind of unfolded it. Okay, so now you can see what I was talking about adding a little bit of kind of a back neck shaping, right? So now I have some width added to the back, both sides. So if I measure that, I don't have my measuring tape, but if I were to measure that, so then I would measure from here to here, and that gives me, just remember, we're going to add a border, so that will account for this portion that's unworked. Then that will give me whatever it is from here to here. I just double that, and that'll give me like the total circumference, right? And hopefully that's a good circumference to where you want it to be. And we didn't have to add anything to the sleeves. So now the sleeve circumference is going to remain at what it is like right now. Okay. So now we're just going to seam up these 2 back sides with a mattress stitch, I believe. Yep. So using mattress stitch, sew right and left hexagon together at the center, back, and both upper shoulders and sleeves. So we can start at the bottom here and then go and then end there and then seam from here to here. Okay, so let's do that real quick. I'm gonna flip this over. And I'm gonna use a different color so you can kind of see my mattress stitch. But usually when you use mattress stitch, you're going to use the same color and it's just gonna kind of disappear. And then all these ends need to be woven in, of course. So let's use the green. And if you haven't done mattress stitch, it's pretty great. It's the main one that I usually use when I'm seaming together anything. So it's probably better to have these woven in first so they don't get in your way. So weave it in your ends and then just start in like the first loop. And then I'm going to go into one loop of this next one with my yarn on my tapestry needle. And then pull that through. And then I'm going to go up to the next set of stitches. So this one we want to match with this one. So I'm going to come in like this. Oops, make sure I'm on camera. Come in this way. So this is how I do it. Come in through one loop. And then you can go into the same loop or you can go into the next loop. So this loop here. just one loop. And then pull that through, and then come in from this side into this loop, and then go into this loop. Sometimes I'll go into the same one, which is fine too. Or you can go into the next one. And it's kind of going like that, almost like a zigzag. And then I'm going to go into the next one and then come back down into the same one that the last one came out of. Go down this way. And then I'm going to go up one to the next stitch and then come back down to the same one where my last kind of loop came out of. And once more, so we're going to go up to the next stitch or the next loop and then come down into the same loop where that one came out of. And then once you get about this many, you want to pull those nice and snug, and then the color disappears into the stitches. But you would use the white, of course, and then it's really going to disappear. So let's do that again. And the next one. So it's kind of like going loop, 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 loop around, loop around. And this is also, this one is nice if you want kind of a flatter seam in the back. But if you don't mind having more of decorative seam, or I don't know if you would call it like a raised seam, pull that. You could just slip stitch seam these together, no problem. You don't have to do this mattress stitch. But this does make it nice and flat and pretty invisible. If you were to do a slip stitch seam, it'd be, you know, you would see it more. But it still looks nice. So whatever you like, whatever your preference is. This does take time though, so you have to be patient. And this also works really nicely on the sides of stitches, or like when you're seaming two row ends together. It works well for that, because you don't really have stitches to kind of work into. You just have row ends. So keep going across. And if I miss one, which sometimes I do, then I just catch an extra one or something like that. And I'm going pretty fast, so I'm probably missing. So I want to show you guys the rest of this, but you're gonna, of course, take your time and make it nice and pretty. Okay, so you can see on the outside and on the inside too, it's pretty invisible too. Okay, so then you would continue to seam that. Let's just pretend we did that. And then you would also seam pretend we seamed the whole back. And then I'm going to seam the top from the edge of the sleeve just to where, to before my back width starts, right? Because you don't want to go across there. You just want to seam this part from here to here, so you have a nice opening for your back. And I'll show you if you decide you want to use a slip stitch seam. I'll show you that too. But you could use either one. You could mattress stitch it or slip stitch seam it. So I'm going to match up my chain two corners, and I'll just join this with a slip stitch here. And I'll just join this. I might have to go yeah, okay, so, and then I'm going to catch I like to catch the inner loops. So this inner loop and this inner loop. So this is the front loop, this is the back loop. So you catch the back loop of this one and the kind of the front loop of that one, but if it was turned around, it'd be the back loop. So it's just the inner loops, the two inner loops. Just catch those and then slip stitch them together. And this is just, I'm just showing you this so you have another option, and I feel like I can do it a little bit quicker, so that's what I'm doing this too. But it is going to leave like a ridge, so it's going to be more visible than the mattress seam. And I'm still using the 4mm hook for this part. I'm not going to use the smaller one until I do the ribbing. Okay, so we would do that all the way across to the edge of the sleeve. Do a few more just so I can get this closed up. And of course, again, you would use the same color as your last color that you used in your striping sequence. I'm just using the green so you can kind of see what I'm doing a little better. The avocado color. And there should be an equal number of double crochets on each side, so. And then once you get to that last, it's going to be a little chain two space. You can fasten off. Okay, so now I've got my shoulder, but see, it leaves a kind of a ridge, which you may not like that on the top of your shoulder. So that's why I usually recommend mattress stitch, but you know, you could always do something decorative if you want. And yeah, so now we've got this kind of put together, the back, the sleeves, pretend you did your other sleeve and pretend your back goes all the way seamed up to here. And then let's see where we're at in our pattern. We can, what time do we at 2:34. Okay, so then we would do, we did the mattress stitch. We seamed the right and the left together, and then we did the back and the both shoulders and sleeves. And now we are going to add some length to the body. So with the next color in the striping sequence, we're going to join at the left front bottom edge, which is right here. And then we're just going to double crochet across. Okay, so this part I'm not going to do because this is pretty basic. It's similar to what we did on the back. You're just going to join and you're going to add double crochet in each double crochet. Okay, so you're going to join here, and then you're going to add double crochets along this bottom edge in here, and then along the back, and then along this, these are the sides of the stitches, right? Like the row ends. You're going to add some along the row ends, and then you're going to add double crochets along here, and then all the way to here, and then you're going to stop right here in this corner. And then if you want to add more length, you can add however many rows you want. So just keep going. Turn, another row, turn, another row, turn, another row, turn, until it gets to the length that you wanted. Or you can not add any length. That's kind of a, whichever you want to do. I'll show you on the main sweater. You can see here's the end of the hexagon. So then I added, it looks like I added, this is one more row of the hexagon. So technically the end of the hexagon is this row right here. I added 2 rows of the avocado, and then I added 3 rows of the pink, and then I added 3 rows of the whatever color this is, like the brick color. And that gave me, you know, like about this much length before I added the ribbing, because that's going to add length too, of course. And this is the size extra small. So it was pretty short. But if yours is already kind of long, if you made a larger size and you already have enough length on it, then you don't have to add any length. Okay, you can just totally skip that part and just move on to the border. Okay, so let's pretend we added the length. And then we're going to add the ribbing. So we're going to add, this is what I wanted to show you, because this is kind of like we're not making the ribbing separately. We're kind of building the ribbing on here. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So it says bottom ribbing with smaller hooks. So now I'm going to start with the smaller hook, single crochet in each double crochet across. So we're just going to work single crochets in each of these stitches across, okay, with my smaller hook. And I'll use the color Sedona. That's what this color was called. So I'll just join here so I can keep my right side facing. So this is the bottom of the left. And I'm going to join right in here. But like I said, if you already have rows added, you would join to the first stitch of that row. But in this case, I don't have any rows added, so I'm going to join with a single crochet in the chain 2 space of the hexagon. And then I'm just going to work a single crochet in each one of these double crochets across the whole side, or across the whole bottom width or bottom circumference of the cardigan. And I could have made this, like, this is like a baby, like a baby sample size that I made. I could have made it even smaller in the interest of time, so I didn't have to work across, but I wanted to show you how to seam it, so I couldn't do the border or anything ahead of time. And of course, you can just sort of weave in your ends as you go. Sometimes I do weave in my ends as I go, and sometimes I don't, because I have found that if I make a mistake and I want to kind of take something apart, it's really, really difficult once I've woven in all those ends and I've kind of buried them in there and I can't find them anymore. So now these are the row ends, right? So you'll have to work stitches along the row ends. We're not going into tops of stitches, we're going into row ends. So for a double crochet, maybe like 2 per double crochet, just go right into wherever like a sort of a space presents itself. You just put a stitch in there, make a stitch in there. And there's a space right here. Don't do it like around the whole double crochet, because then you'll have like a big hole. Do it like into the actual stitch itself. That makes it nicer if you can find a nice space. Another one here, and another one here. It doesn't really have to be exact because we're not working in any kind of pattern. So Just add it so it's nice and evenly spaced across the row ends, okay? And then we're continuing across. My foot is asleep. My foot always falls asleep at this desk that I do my classes at. Okay. And then I'm just going to do a single crochet across in the top of each double crochet. Most of these are double crochets, so you can simply work a single crochet in the top of each double crochet. You only have to worry about those row ends and that tiny bit of those 6 total rows that we added for the back width, if you did add those. And like I said, you can always add more too. You can always add more or less. Once you have, if you want, you can just kind of pin the hexagons together before you seam them and then try it on. That might be helpful too. Just kind of pin it, try it on. If you say, oh, I want it to be a little bit more, give me a little bit more ease, and just add another row or two. Okay, so now I have, just along this bottom edge, I have single crochet stitches. And now to make the ribbing, I don't need to fasten off here. What I'm going to do is turn, and then I'm going to make a chain of 11. So here I'm at the bottom ribbing. I did the setup row. I'm going to chain 11 and single crochet in the second chain from the hook, and then each chain across, and then slip stitch in the stitches on the setup row. Okay, let me show you what that looks like. Make sure I don't have any questions. And you guys know, but I'll remind you, this is going to be, both parts are going to be on the Michael's YouTube channel. So if you missed anything, or if you want to go over it again, you can totally go there and watch that, right? Okay, watch the replay. So I'm going to chain 11. It tells me to chain 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then I'm just going to work down this chain or across this chain. So the second chain from the hook is this one. So single crochet, or yeah, single crochet in each one of these chains. So if I've done it in the second chain from the hook, I should have a total of 10 single crochets when I get to the end of that chain. And now what I want to do is just slip stitch into these next 2 single crochets that are on my setup row. So this one and this one, this is my setup row that we did. I want to slip stitch into the next one. And then I want to slip stitch again into the very next one. So I've slip stitched 2. Okay, now I have this kind of thing. Now, normally this is going to be a big, this is for the larger size, right? The 10. So this is how long you want your ribbing to be. This tiny sweater, I would have made a smaller one, right? Okay, so then I'm going to turn, and it tells me to chain 1. So skip the neck, and then skip the next 2 slip stitches on the setup row, and then back loop only single crochet in these stitches, right? So let me show you close up so you can see. So I worked a slip stitch here and a slip stitch here. So now when I turn, I'm going to work up this row, but I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going to skip these 2 slip stitches that we did on the setup row and only work into the chain, or that initial chain 10 that we made. So we're going to skip and skip, and then go into the back loop only, and then slips or single crochet. And sometimes it's hard to tell how many you skip, so let's just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that should be right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so now I made 10 single crochets, and then I want to chain up 1 and turn again, just turning kind of this thing, and then I'm going to work back down. So 1, 2, back loop only, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then that 10th one is right there. It's kind of, it gets like pulled, but that's where the 10th one is, right? And now I'm back to my setup row. So now I have these 2 single crochets here. I want to slip stitch, and that kind of like joins it to the setup row, and slip stitch 2, and then turn again. Remember, skip that slip stitch and skip that slip stitch. And then I should have 10 more back loop only single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then the same thing again, chain up 1, back loop only single crochet 10, and then you're going to join it with those 2 slip stitches to the setup row, and then go back up, down, up, down, up, down. And then that will create this ribbing around the whole bottom edge. Let me show you on the main one so you can see. So once it's all worked and it's nice and flat, you can see that I did that ribbing along the whole bottom edge of the cardigan. And that's all you have to do. So now you could make this separate, just make a long ribbing and then sew it on, or you could just do it kind of as you go. Like this is the method to do it as you go. Just work down, slip stitch, work back up, work down, slip stitch 2, work back up, work down. Remember to skip those 2 slip stitches when you go back up. And remember when you're doing this to count every row, because if you start adding by accident or whatever, or taking away stitches or losing stitches, your ribbing is going to be wonky. So just make sure you count 10 each time and you'll have a nice flat ribbing like this. So that is what you do along the bottom edge. Okay, let's go back to our pattern. A lot of this is kind of repeating what we did. We did the bottom ribbing. Now I have an option for adding some sleeve length too. So with the right side facing, we're going to add the next color and the striping sequence with a double crochet in the chain 2 space to the left of the sleeve seam. So let's pretend we're going to do that. And these are the rows. So back to your larger hook. Don't use the smaller hook. The smaller hook's only for the ribbing. So if I want to add length to my sleeves, now remember, if your hexagon is larger, that's going to add these rounds, right? So these rounds are going to continue out this way. So your hexagon may be longer. So you're going to have to add fewer rows. If your hexagon is, if your sleeve is still short and you want to add a few more rows to get it down to your wrist, then just, add however many is needed. I tried to calculate it as best I can in the pattern for all the different sizes, but you can totally modify it to get it, like a little bit more exact. So I'm going to add, it says to the chain 2 space to the left. So this is the seam. This is the chain 2 space to the right of it. This is the chain 2 space to the left of it. So I'm just going to add a double crochet. And then I'm going to double crochet in each one of these double crochets across. Let me make sure in the pattern. Double crochet in the two. Okay, so then what it's telling me to do in the pattern is just to double crochet in each one of these double crochets around until I get to the end. And then I'm going to double crochet once I get all the way around the sleeve. I'm just checking my time, 2:51. Okay. I'll do this really quick. So once I get all the way around the sleeve with double crochets, I'm getting a little sloppy because I'm trying to go as fast as I can, but you guys are gonna, of course, go nice. This is gonna take longer than an hour, so you're gonna have to watch the video and, you know, kind of work at your own pace so it's nice and neat. And all of this is kind of like the same concept is going to be for if you do a different type of hexagon, like a granny hexagon or something like that, something with different stitches. The concept is the same as far as where you're adding width and where you're adding length and whatnot. So then at the end, I'm just going to make another double crochet into that last chain 2 space, and then I'm just gonna, it says join with a slip stitch, I'm guessing. Join with a slip stitch to the top of that first double crochet that I made. And then now if I want to add a few more rounds, I would chain up 3 and then keep double crocheting around and around for however many rows I want. And here you can see on the finished one, I didn't turn, so it's going to be all right side facing, round and around and around, joined. Where's my join? Join, here's where I joined my rounds. So joined rounds there. And then I did a little bit of decreasing here to kind of decrease it at the cuff a bit. And of course, that's just double crochet 2 together. So you would just follow the pattern, make your double crochet two togethers. And even if you want to make fewer or more decreases, it's not going to matter because it's not any kind of like pattern where you need a specific amount of stitches. So you can make fewer or more decreases for the cuff if you want to, or no decreases, however you want to do it. And then you're going to add the cuff the exact same way we did it on the bottom border. So we add that row, that setup row of single crochets around. In this case, it's going to be around. So set up round of single crochets, and then you're going to do the border just like we did, up and down, up and down, up and down, all the way around. The only difference for the cuff is when you get to the end, you're going to have this start. So the first row that you did, and then you're going to have the last row that you did. And then you're just going to need to join those two, right? So this will be the first one I did. And then let's say this was the last one I did. I'm just going to slip stitch join those two together. So the cuff is obviously one piece, okay? And then the very last thing you're going to do, and this is all in the pattern, once you added your length through your sleeves and you added your cuff and you added your bottom border, the last thing you're going to do is just add this is the bottom. Hold on. You're going to add the ribbing around the neck area and the fronts, right? So this is where my bottom border ended. Show you my little sample. So let's say here's my bottom border, right? What I'm going to do is add single crochet stitches starting here, single crochet, single crochet, single crochet, all the way up here, and then along the back neck, and then back down, along here. And then it's going to end where the last row of my bottom border ended. So let me show you that on the larger one. So here I worked single crochet stitches before I added, you got to do that setup row of single crochets and then you can add the border along that. So I did single crochet all the way up until you get to here's the back neck. You can see that. So see, here's where the shoulder seam was. And then I just added that along the back neck. And then I came down, back down along the front, all the way down till I got to that. That's why you add the bottom border first. So until I got to that last row of the bottom border, which is right here. And then I continue to add that setup row of single crochets. And then I just start adding the border all the way around, back around the way you came. So that way, that's the very last thing you do, is that sort of front border. Okay, so you can see, I know it's hard to see because it's so close up, but I started here along the back and then back down. So you've got a nice fall sort of warm cardigan, right? If you want to make it shorter sleeves, you just don't add those rows, and you can skip the cuff too if you want. You could skip the whole border if you want, but this is the way I like it for fall, with like a nice sort of decorative border. I think it looks pretty. So I know I tried to show you guys as much as I could, and some of it was just an explanation, of course, just in the interest of time, but let me check and see if I have any questions. So not too many questions. I guess that usually means you guys are following along and understanding everything I'm telling you. Again, if you want to watch this again and work along with the pattern, you can watch both parts 1 and part 2 over on the Michael's YouTube channel. And I will be back in October for, if anyone doesn't have any final questions, I'll be back in October for a Halloween wreath class. So check out that. Check out the upcoming classes for that. And as always, thank you guys for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next time.